We got to go with those segues whenever possible. Himmelskibet.
Or a trip to Mars is the English title, but I like Himmelskibet.
I do too, which shares the name of a ride at like a it, it shares the name of a ride at an amusement park in Copenhagen. I believe it means like rocket ship, basically. um, Himmelskibet. We were like nearly done with like picking what movies we watched, and then I saw this movie. I saw like what the outfits of these characters
Right.
were wearing, and I said, Glenn, we need to watch this movie. You need to watch this movie, Glenn. You have
True.
a poster of the Rocketeer behind you right now. He's pointing it to it
Yeah.
if you're listening to the podcast.
Yeah, some good sort of like retro futuristic fashion in this movie
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, this is like a pretty proper space opera in ways that I think are more in line with what I think of that genre being than like A Trip to the Moon.
For sure. There are some like kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know if this movie was meant to have any kind of reference to Trip to the Moon in the original language, because it was just called Himmelskibet
Right.
and not A Trip to Mars, which it shares the title with a kind of crappy Edison movie from like 8 years before. But it does have some kind of reminiscences of A Trip to the Moon, particularly in the fact that all of the people have very silly names. Like Professor
Yes.
Dubious and Corona Planetaros.
We got to talk about Professor Dubious. I have it written down. Always trust a guy named Professor Dubious. Very trustworthy sounding fella. Which he turns out to, be exactly what he sounds like. I do love names like this in silent movies where they're just like, I don't know, this guy's the villain. What's his name? I don't know, Professor Dubious. Like, there's sort of a cartoon logic to them that I really enjoy.
No, I like that too. The basic arc of this is that there's a young, like a kind of flyboy son of a scientist who has decided that he wants to build a spaceship and go to Mars. He spends 2 years building a ship and gathers a team, a ragtag team, and they say goodbye to Earth and launch off to Mars. They spend 6 months in space and are almost driven to mutiny.
Drunken space mutiny.
Yes. They land on Mars. They discover that the Martians are hippies who are are extremely advanced, and in another kind of reminiscence, or almost like a deconstruction of the kind of semi-colonialist, maybe satirical, maybe not, Trip to the Moon. They come back and like bring peace to Earth in a way.
Yeah, it is very much not a sort of tale of conquering the planets. It is like there are civilizations beyond our own that exist in the stars that are like better, and we should learn from them.
I mean, yeah, like speaking of, the Shustrom movie being such a kind of cynical movie, this is a really optimistic movie. I like this a lot.
It is honestly, it is so optimistic that my modern cynical brain was like, when is the dark twist gonna come?
Same.
So after the space mutiny, they land on Mars, and they find this sort of like very kind of hippie-esque, like the Martians have discovered the universal language that everyone can speak and understand
Yeah.
just naturally. And it's like, oh, there used to be wars and stuff on Mars, and they figured it all out. They've solved world peace, as it were, on their planet. There's this kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, they land on a planet and they find this like seemingly utopian society where it's just like, oh, everything's great here. Like everything's
Yeah.
fine. Everything works out. Like here's all these beautiful things and like amazing technology and things like that. And I was like, when are they gonna find the bodies? You know?
Yeah,
It's
you're
like
waiting for like a seedy underbelly or
you're waiting for
something.
them to be like, oh, just implant the slug in your brain, you know? And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, it's like he is injured. Let's eat him. You know? I kept waiting for that to happen because that's every episode of Star Trek is that. Every like 50s sci-fi movie is that, and it just never happens. It's just it is exactly what it says on the tin. You know?
Which I thought it was great. I really liked that. Like I was expecting a seedy underbelly. I was expecting bodies. I was expecting a midsummer-esque kind of
Well, you brought up Midsummer. I had so many Midsummer flashbacks during this because the closest thing it gets to a dark city underbelly is kind of a weird ritual sacrifice thing happening, which
I
is
don't
very
know.
Midsummer.
I think that you can interpret it in a nice
that
way.
that was definitely, I think, me projecting because I was already being like, this is a Scandinave. This is like it's shot in Denmark, I assume. So it has this sort of like Northern European landscape, and it's all sunny, and everyone's in like flowing clothes, and I'm just like,
Yeah, these
when are they gonna find the bodies? You know,
these aliens are literally like these Martians. They're literally walking around with flowers in their hair, flowy white dresses. They talk about peace and love. They're vegetarians.
yeah,
Like it's kind of wild. Like not just how much they, saw about the future, science fiction. They saw about the future like 40 years later. They like could depict what hippies were before
yeah.
they existed, you
Well, I
know?
mean, I'm sure that there were other like social movements before then that were like, hey, be one with nature and like chill out. You know,
Yeah.
there's a repeated line in this movie, which is "Love is the force you call God," which I do actually think is a very lovely sentiment.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was in a song that the aliens sang to the humans as they like left the planet and went back home.
Mm-hmm.
The song like had some good messages in it, definitely. Like I wrote it down. Return with a stronger faith. You're connected to the planet. Space is the mother of life, embracing all our globes. That's kind of a nice sentiment. Love is the force you call God. Bring back the message that we're all the same. Understand that we're all steps on the same ladder that leads to eternity. Love is the force that you call God. Our seeds you will sow on earth, ridding you of your lowly speech. Flawlessness you shall reach through the force of love. Love is the force you call God. And this is as they're walking into a ship that's covered like a brass spaceship that's covered in flowers.
Yeah, there is the aforementioned kind of weird ritual suicide thing happening that is not explicitly that, but kind of has vibes of it. I mean, that is the closest thing to a sort of dark underbelly to this movie. And it's mostly me projecting onto it.
Projecting Midsummer, yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you? Here's the thing, though, right? Is that so? The main guy, he falls in love with an alien.
Naturally.
He sleeps under the tree of longing, and then she tells him that if he feels the longing in his dream, then the two of them were meant to be, and he has a dream that means that they get together. So he kind of like asks her dad, who's like the leader of the Martians, for his permission. He's like, yeah, great.
Utopian society still hadn't figured out that thing.
Yeah. And he like when he comes up to ask him, her dad's like lying on a bench in the woods, looking kind of like nearly dead. And then he goes like, that's great, you guys. I'm also having a good time because I'm about to make the journey into death. He says, I feel that my life is fulfilled and I'm ready for the happiness of death. And then they do a whole party to celebrate his life, and then he sails away on a boat to the undying lands, and Arwen gets to stay with Aragorn. It's the undying lands.
It's
not Midsummer
right.
face smashing.
I was already so reminded of Midsummer at that point that I was just like, oh my god. Back on Earth, things are not so lovey-dovey. Professor Dubious is being a real asshole. So Professor Dubious shows up at the beginning. There's all this talk about, we're going to Mars, we're building a rocket, blah, 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 blah. And then there's this guy named Dubious who's like, no, you won't. It's not going to work. And then back on Earth, we see Professor Planeteros, the father of the kind of lead astronaut who went and fell in love with the Martian woman, has grown weak from stress. He doesn't know if they made it or not. He's sort of like, they went off, they left, we don't know what happened. And so Dubious shows up just to kind of gloat at him. Then, news reaches them that the ship called the Excelsior is on its way back, and Dubious is like, oh, I always believed that they would do it. And they're like, no, you didn't. Fuck off. He does, and then is promptly struck by lightning while shaking his fist at the ship as it lands.
He's definitely a mustache twirler.
I do think that's funny, though, that it's like this movie is so sort of like, oh, like peace and togetherness and love, and it's like, this is what we need to embrace. And it's like, and then there's this one asshole that no one likes, and he gets struck by lightning and dies.
Yeah, it does seem to undermine its point a little bit. And the movie really is making a point about, like, it's the classic sci-fi thing to like comment on what Earth is and everything like that, but like the movie is very pointed in going like, these aliens are doing it better than us and we need to learn from them. Like, they're horrified at the idea that we harm and kill each other and that we eat meat, and even when there's like the humans like almost murder an alien and they kill a bird that
right, they
horrifies.
They shoot a bird and then they throw a grenade at a guy.
Yeah,
which makes me wonder, why did they bring grenades?
They could be hostile aliens. They don't know.
True. I guess, you never know. Could be an ape planet.
But that like these trigger happy Danes are have done something so horrible. It's been thousands of years since a shot has been fired on Mars, and everyone is so horrified and like, but instead of punishing them or forcing them to go away, they take them to a place to be judged, right? And they think, oh no, someone's gonna sentence us
again.
To death,
I was like, oh
like
my god, what is it gonna be? And then it's just like, no, it's just like, think about it, think about what you
did. They're like, no, like no, you shall judge yourself. Only through self-knowledge can you atone for your sin. And so they just like think about it for a while and they go like, man, we're really sorry,
They just very sheepishly come out of the tribunal being like, sorry guys.
Yeah. So they throw their guns on the ground. They renounce killing of all creatures and their weapons. And the Martian that was grenaded, just from the good vibes, comes back to life. And then they're dressed in the robes of innocence from then on. But like, key to this, to my point from earlier, is that the astronauts are kind of astonished at this system of justice, and they think back to the way that criminals are treated on Earth, and they think like, how monstrous of us to lock people up in jail. This is like an anti-carceral movie. It's awesome.
Yeah. I do think, while I do like the points this movie is making, I think it is incredibly blunt.
Yeah.
It doesn't really weave this stuff into the story so much as it just kind of has characters show up and say them. I mean, that's, if I have a criticism of this movie, it's definitely that it doesn't really have a lot of dramatic tension in it, other than like, uh-oh, what's gonna happen? And it's like, nothing bad, everything's kind of fine. Which is, I mean, certainly it is interesting to see, just because it's like, that's not normally how stories go, and so it's like, oh, this is unexpected. It lays it on pretty thick,
I guess. I don't know. I don't mind things being blunt. and I was refreshed at the optimism, and I thought that it was actually dealing with like some more complex ideas than most stuff that I've like seen so far.
Yeah, for sure. It is definitely a movie with kind of like philosophical ideas on its mind,
Hmm.
which isn't a lot of what we've watched. I guess. Or at least not to this degree where it is also like very forward thinking. I think not, and not only in its kind of philosophy and its sort of like morals, but also just in that it's a lot of the design and a lot of the kind of plot mechanics of it remind me a lot of like classic Star Trek.
Hmm.
I don't know if Gene Roddenberry ever saw this movie, but it feels like a very much a sort of like proto precursor to the kind of like idealistic sort of utopian ideas of Star Trek.
Yeah. The effects also were quite good, and they reminded me of like old Méliès effects and how we don't really see that much stuff anymore. Like they had mats that made it look like they were looking out over the sky like thousands of feet in the air while they were flying over it. They had superimpositions of the ship flying through the clouds, and they had like a miniature Earth and globe
Yeah,
in space, and the thing moving through space. Like it looked like space effects from many years later.
I think I was also surprised at how the degree to which kind of how much more scientifically accurate this movie is towards like space travel than
Yeah.
a trip to the moon, where it's like we shot a big rock, we shot a big cannon at the moon, and a bunch of guys in suits came out and like fought, moon men. Whereas this is like, no, it takes a really long time. You have to get in like a pressurized thing, and you're gonna be in there for a very long time, and you can't leave. And it's like the food isn't good.
And like and they were like calculating when Mars is going to be closest to
Right,
Earth
that too.
too.
The sort of like there's all this talk in the beginning of like planetary orbits and things like that, where I was like, oh, this is like pretty. They get it. They know
It's like
what's up.
hard sci-fi for the time.
Yeah, yeah. I guess we haven't really watched a lot of like effects driven movies in a while.
Yeah.
Whereas
I
this
miss them.
is very much. I'm sure we got many more to come.